how could the international community look at this escalation? Because it's still on Hezbollah that's making, quote unquote, the first move when it comes to the north and diverting the attention.
I think the world community should have great clarity and should understand that there's a fundamental narrative divergence between the Palestinian arena and everything else. In the Palestinian arena, the world is a little bit tired of Israel and the Palestinians and views them as squabbling tribes. And it's difficult to say that one side or the other is totally right. Hamas is satanic and diabolical, but the Palestinians themselves may be incompetent at negotiating independence for themselves over the decades, but they have a legitimate grievance against Israel. Hezbollah does not, and Lebanon does not, and Yemen does not, and the Houthis do not, and Iran does not. And the world, I have felt for some time, should lay down the law with these miscreant regimes and proxies and basically tolerate nothing and be willing to put muscle behind it and not let it just be Israel's problem. And by the way, letting this just be Israel's problem is a particularly dangerous maneuver when Israel's government is problematic. It's a government that most of Israel, I think, doesn't trust to prosecute the war in a way that is free of political shenanigans. And so we have a very dangerous cocktail here, and I would hope the world would get more involved and specifically make demands of Lebanon and of Iran. And when I say Lebanon, I know they're hapless, but they need to own up to their haplessness and say, look, people, we can't control Hezbollah, we want help. And maybe then the world will help them. Now, I'm very well aware that the common wisdom in the world right now is that the West, and the U.S. in particular, have war weariness after the unsuccessful forays into Iraq and Afghanistan, and there's no way they'd risk a third. I'm not so sure, because they also don't want to risk a nuclear Iran lording it over the entire planet as a central part of the axis of resistance / evil.
Very important for the Israelis to understand that we live in a sort of a coalition game, and we have to also respect our coalition partners, the U.S., the Europeans, and so on, that help us against the Houthis and so on. And with this perspective, I think the Biden doctrine or whatever, or the second flow of the Abraham Accord, whatever you call it, this normalization of Saudi Arabia, opening up some prospect to the Palestinians, this is the only strategic horizon that exists. And after the election in the U.S., I hope Israel would wake up to understand how it's been helped by its coalition partners, how can it help its coalition partner, and be a constructive players in creating a different Middle East.
I have some hope that in the interregnum between the war, between the election, between November 6th, the day after the election, and January 21st, the U.S. leadership will be completely free of political concerns, and maybe at that point some serious revisionism can happen in what has hitherto been its rather hapless and reactive approach towards Middle Eastern miscreants. I'll add this, though. Israel, because the right-wing government of Israel is at such loggerheads with the world, they tend to have indifference about diplomacy. Like, they think everyone is against them. And they have a little bit infected the people of Israel with that defensive mindset. And I'm here to say it's not true. Israel, in the grand scheme of things, if you divorce Israel from its entanglement in the West Bank and current disaster area in Gaza, Israel proper, vis-a-vis the region, has a real chance to be accepted as a positive player in the region and the world. And indifference towards this is wrong. And also the ingratitude the government is displaying towards the U.S., without which it could not do the war in Gaza, is foolishness. Because if it goes into Lebanon, it will need U.S. support. And one thing that has to be said in this regard is they must not project indifference to civilian lives in Lebanon. They have to make sure, way beyond the call of duty even, they have to make maximally sure that Lebanese civilians are spared for two reasons. One, they can't afford for the world to think about Lebanon what they're currently thinking so many people about Gaza. And two, the future for Israel, if there's a good future in Israel, it goes through peace with Lebanon. And the people of Lebanon have real potential within them to be friendly towards Israel, most of them for sure. And that must not be sacrificed on the altar of fighting Hezbollah.
You say we need the U.S. support if we do have this full-scale war with Hezbollah in Lebanon. What type of U.S. support are we talking about, though?
First of all, in the international arena, you need the support, legitimation.
Of course, but is it words? Is it words of affirmation?
No, but also ammunition, all other things, of course, intelligence, whatever, deterrence against Iran. Of course, this is a coalition game. Israelis didn't get it fully, I think.
And a veto at the Security Council.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, without that,
Yeah.
the road is very short towards
I-
economic sanctions and maybe even an arms embargo.